Alright everyone, just set it bright out here. It's gonna be my first kind of YouTube video. Just want to try it, so here goes nothing. Just want to talk about things that come to my mind, ideas, and what I want to talk about today is what I call the burden of no. So essentially the burden of no is an observation of society, and particularly like Western developed nations, sort of what's happening in these countries, because I'm from the United States, so I feel I can talk about this adequately. Essentially the burden of no is an observation, is trying to get at the reason why there's so much of a negativity in the Western world. For example, why it seems to be the case that even though we're so developed, we have so many advancements, all the comforts of life, things are progressing further and further in these departments, that we still have this strangely high degree of mental illness and an increasing degree of mental illness, and just in general this sense of malaise that runs through society. And essentially what I think I've come up with is that modernity, technology, it forces us to be in a pessimistic state. And here's why. Because in more of our, I guess, primal state, for much of our evolution, seems to be the case that we didn't have almost anything in abundance. Like food was scarce, resources were scarce, and so our instincts, our drives that have evolved for millions of years with us as as physical beings in this environment, has been conditioned for a world like this, for an environment such as this. And this is to say that for almost of our evolution, that the things that give us pleasure, such as for food, like fat, sugar, and salt, they would have been very scarce. And so the pleasure that we would have garnered from them, paradoxically, even though they were scarce, the amount of what could be said as like a life affirmation, a sort of positivity that was gained, the intensity, the feeling that was gained when you ate something after a long period of starving, or even for a day's work of like hunting or gathering food, that amount, the intensity of that pleasure would have been very much more life affirming than we're used to now, because just in terms of relativity, it seems to be the case that like the dopaminergic system in the brain is all very relative. So that when you have a high stimulus, then it readjusts. And essentially in modern society, we have a high stimulus all the time. So, for primitive cultures, for most of our evolution, that relativity was so much lower because we didn't have access to everything all the time in our fridge. Now in modern times, we have access to all the food we want, fat, sugar, and salt. Companies profit off selling those kinds of food. We have access to every drug out there. We have access to every form of entertainment, any sort of way to get dopamine, nicotine sticks, cigarettes, any sort of way that we can hit our dopaminergic system, we have available to us 24/7 all the time. And so instead of having this great intensity of positive emotion and feeling when we obtain something that normally would have been life affirming, because it would have been scarce, and so when we got it, the amount of positive emotion would have been so drastically higher than the amount of lack, our baseline level, because of the sort of level of lack of resources that was around. The amount of intensity they would have felt from getting something, from eating something sweet like a fruit or finding honey, would have been so much greater, and the feeling of it would have, relative to our baseline feeling, would be so much more intense, so much more life affirming in a sort of Nietzschean sense. And so now that we have access to everything all the time, the paradox is that we're thrown into a sort of pessimism, because the feelings no longer, maybe you're going from here and you hit a nicotine stick and you go from here, but you've been hitting this nicotine stick so many times, or smoking cigarettes or eating fat, salty food all the time, so your baseline, instead of being down here, has been up here, and whenever you eat this, now you only get this little jump instead of this big jump. And so this feeling of like life affirmation, this feeling of positivity from this reward that you're sort of biologically blessed with or given just by our evolution, by how our brains work. Why, in a sense, like spiritual sense or a metaphysical sense, I'm not here to discuss, but just that experience exists, that you have that experience of life, of reward when you attain these things that are good for survival, for life, because they're rare, because they're necessary. And So essentially the burden of no is to say that we are, because of this, in modern society, always in a state of sort of pessimism, a state of malaise, not a state of constant life affirmation, because we rarely experience those feelings that are fast, like greatly life affirming, just due to their intensity. We don't experience that anymore. And so, yeah, that's just an observation of mine. That's what I call the burden of no. I'm not going to posit any solutions here in this video. I just wanted to try making a video, putting it on the internet, see what happens. So put your comments below if you have any thoughts. I don't know if that was very articulate, but there goes nothing, I guess. Catch you later.